everybody. This is Page to Screen, where Christina and I are going to find out what's actually better, the book or the movie. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Christina.
Hey, we did it! People listening will not know how long it took us to get that intro.
And I promise you that will not be the consistent intro.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. This is our first one, you guys, so bear with us. So basically what we're going to do is it's our own little book club. We read a book, we watch a movie, and then we determine for you if the movie was better than the book or if the book was better than the movie.
So our first one is Little Women, which was published 1868. The movie that we're going to focus on is not the two older ones, but the one from 2019. And Nikki, could you please explain to me the plot of Little Women?
Yeah, actually, I could tell you a lot about Little Women because I went into a really big researchy deep dive. I can also tell you it was honestly released September 30th.
Oh.
Of 1868. So depending on when we put this out, we're right around an anniversary, you guys.
Yeah.
Big anniversary. So basically it's the story of the March family. Their dad's off fighting a war, the Civil War, not just a war.
By himself. He's the only one.
He just left. They live in Concord, Massachusetts. The dad is out fighting the Civil War with a bunch of other guys. But it's basically about these sisters, Jo, Meg, Beth, and Amy. And it's just about, like, the trials and tribulations of being a young woman at that time in history. And then, like, their moms involved sometimes, too. But it's basically about the sisters and what life, has in store for them.
May I interject, too?
Absolutely.
So, they called their mother Marmee.
Yeah.
I did not realize that she was also Marmee for quite some time. So I thought, well, who is this Marmee? Is that the aunt? Is that... Then I realized... Interesting. Yeah, it's weird. I've never heard of a mom being called Marmee before. Is that a thing?
I don't know. That's not something I found in my research. Because I just assumed it, because it's weird because they call her Mom and Marmee.
Right.
They switch, so it's never like they're just like Marmee, Marmee, Marmee. It's always Mom or Marmee. Like, it's interchangeable.
Yeah.
Which bothered me. That also bothered me because it confused me.
I looked up Marmee.
Oh, what does it mean?
The only connection is to Little Women.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. We should also make one point, which is that Louisa May Alcott did several Little Women books, and we're only focusing on the first one.
Yeah. We're only focusing, like, the first one is in 2 parts, which, until I started reading, I did not realize it was a 2-part book.
Right.
And we'll talk about the movies stuff after, because there's a lot to dig into with the movie. But with the book, I think because of my knowledge of the films, I think that's why I disliked the first part of the book so much. Because the action, when compared to the film, is like back to back to back. Everything happens, and you're just like, great, cool, now they're adults. No.
Right.
There are full chapters where you're just like, cool.
Well, it's the whole thing starts with a group of little girls complaining that they're not going to get Christmas presents.
Yeah.
That's a real hard pill to swallow, especially where we find ourselves in 2020. And then it doesn't get much better for quite some time. Honestly, for me, I disliked it quite a bit. And then the first time I found myself engaged was when the book gets thrown into the fire. That was when I finally started to enjoy it a little bit. But aside from that, it tends to fall into quite an immature and pettiness, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Amy throwing the book in the fire, I was like, I hate you. I hate you, Amy. She was upset because she couldn't go see, like, a play. And, like, you're too young. Stay home. You're a child. And she's like, oh, well, in that case, I'm going to throw this book in the fire. Thus proving, once again, Amy, you are a child. I agree. That's where the book really picked up. But for me, honestly, I liked part 2 way more than part 1. Because in part 1,
agreed.
It carries over in part 2, but in part 1, there's such an emphasis on how poor they are in their comparison to everyone around them. Especially when it comes to Lori. And taking in mind what you said about, like, now, like, 2020, it's just, like, it was just too much. And after doing some more research about it, she didn't even want to write this book.
Right.
Like, Alcott didn't want to write a book for girls, and somebody was just like, you should do it. And she was like, I don't want to. So she just, much like Joe does at the end, where they're like, just write and see what happens, and she just wrote a bunch of stuff that she didn't think was any good. That's what happened with the first half of the book. Alcott wrote a bunch of stuff where she was like, whatever, and gave it away to some publisher, and they were like, great. And then people ate it up, and that's when she wrote the second half. And I'm not saying I let me preface this by saying I do not like the book overall, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that. I know that it's like, it is one of, it is, in 2014, it was listed as one of America's 100 most favorite books. And it's been ranked among Time's top 100 young adult books of all time. It's never been out of print. It's been printed in over, like, 50 languages. So, yes, I know that people are going to be mad when they listen to this, and they're going to have some thoughts about this.
Listen, Cats is a very successful musical, okay? So the numbers don't mean much to me. And I almost immediately I started reading it and went, oh no. Yeah. And I feel like I lose a little bit of my feminist card because of the fact that I don't particularly like it. And the funny thing is that when I was a kid, my mom would buy me a lot of those abridged classics. A lot of them from Barnes & Noble branding. And I know that I read the abridged version of Little Women, and then I watched the 94 movie with my mother. I don't remember that. I didn't remember anything. The only thing I thought of when I sat down to read this was, I think one of them dies. But Nikki and I just talked about mermaids. So maybe I'm confusing that, because I also think there's something with a pond, I want to say, but I don't know if I'm completely fabricating that here. There's not much here really speaks to me. It doesn't, and which is funny because it's Little Women. It's the great, it's the creation of the American girl. It's, you don't get so much of female-centric media without Little Women, yet I don't find myself really engaged with it.
And I think that we might have had a different feeling towards the book if they had continued to teach it in schools, because this was one of the number one books taught in schools after it came out, and it was the number one book for boys, actually, at a time when it first came out. Teddy Roosevelt said that this was one of his favorite books. He read Little Women. What was the sequel called? Little Men. He loved all of them. So I wonder if, honestly, I resonated. I hated Amy so much at the start of this book. I resonated more with her towards the end, especially there's that part with her and Lori where they're inside their big house. Spoiler alert, they're married. And shocking surprise. You guys have had like 100,000 years to read this book. Surprise. This is what happened. When she's with Lori and they're talking about how they have all this money, they're like, we'd much rather pave the way for other people than to squander it on ourselves. Lori literally says something where it's like, there's no point in saving this money for future generations to ruin it. And I was like, I get that. That sounds great. Like, and that's the kind of way I feel about things. And I was like, oh man, I resonate so much with Amy, when I thought I was going to really resonate with Joe, someone who had been so independent and so headstrong. And I wonder if this was still taught in schools, like if I had read this in middle school or like, you know, freshman year of high school, if this is something that would have propelled me to be a stronger individual like Joe, or to give myself more to my community like Amy does, or to be as selfless as Meg, when Meg is like, well, guess I'll just sell that silk because I'm a bad wife.
One thing that I found was that sometimes I thought that the lessons ended up getting lost, and that the lessons are under this sort of puritanical lens.
Yes.
So when the mom says, she comes out with her Bruce Banner saying that she's always angry, she's angry every day, that was really profound for me. But then she turns it into the story of how her husband helped her be less angry by telling her to shush. I'm sorry. If Carlos looked at me and put his finger to his mouth and told me to shush, no, he better don't, because that's not going to go very well. And I found that a lot of the stories felt sort of, I don't know what this is supposed to teach me. Like the whole, it's Meg, right? Meg does the thing where she gets all dressed up, right? Yeah, okay. So that scene, and then Lori basically tells her the equivalent of, you look prettier without makeup on.
Yeah.
I just thought, you know, I get it from a certain point of view where she's trying to be something that maybe she thought she was, but she's not. And the whole idea of not trying to impress other people, not buying into the shallowness of others. Yet it also sort of felt like this is her moment and she's being made fun of. And I really didn't like that either.
Oh, yeah. There were a lot, honestly, the women part where they're kind of coming into their own and they're kind of understanding themselves and growing a bit, that I was okay with. A lot of the morals and the lessons felt extremely preachy, and a lot of them were based on how to be better for the man in your life. Which made me feel like I am currently a bad wife. Especially, the things that bothered me the most were when Professor Bear, is that how you say his name? When he...
Let's go with that.
There's a part, where is it? I wrote down the page number too. Page 342 in my book.
You're like Professor Snape telling me to go.
Where he literally says that he is so, where is it? I can't find it in this book right now. He says that he's kind of like happy that Jo has stopped writing. And it's like, that's her character. That's what she wants. She went to New York City to pursue a dream, and you, as the man who is in love with her, is happy that she doesn't want to do that anymore? Or when there's the part about Meg, and I think it's the part where Marmee / mom is all like, that's the thing, I'm always angry or whatever. When Meg is having those issues with, she's spending all of her time with her kids because she's raising them while her husband's out at work. And then they talk about how her husband comes home and he's miserable because his wife isn't pretty for him and doesn't keep house for him. So he goes and hangs out with his friend who just got married to a younger woman. And it's like, what is the lesson I'm supposed to take, that every day of my life I need to make sure I look my best for a man who apparently only values my appearance? Because he even says later on, they're in their study or their living room or whatever, and she asks him to talk about politics with her. And he has that like internal monologue thing where he's like, oh, she wants to be interested in politics. How sweet. Yeah. And it's like, maybe Meg actually wants to feel like she has some choices, some liberties. It's more than just you thinking that she wants to be involved in like something so frivolous as politics. Oh, she, like, oh my God, like you guys are driving me nuts. Or like when my favorite, I'm sorry. My favorite part of the whole book is when Joe says no to Lori.
Yeah.
He runs away he runs away and rows away in a boat.
Pack your bags and move away.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you were friend zoned so hard that the only thing you could think to do was ride away in a boat?
Yeah, it's very like a Family Guy kind of cartoony.
That's the thing. It felt so cartoony, whereas Alcott was able to kind of like make these women grounded in reality.
Right.
And then the men are just so... maybe that's how men were back then. I don't know.
But, you know, to kind of play devil's advocate and to look at it on the, on the other hand, is that I was very surprised with how relevant most of their problems are for today. There's the whole thing where she buys something, takes it home, and it's not quite what she thought. The whole bit with Joe trying to cook, and she's going to do the lobster, and she's doing a dessert, but she accidentally does the salt instead of sugar. That whole part, I've been there. I have been in that position. And I'll also, it's funny that it's how many years later and we're still having the same problems. Like the bit about the politics, we're still having difficulty getting men to take us seriously when we want to talk about politics. Yeah. That's still a problem today. So perhaps the moral or how it's addressed might be problematic in 2020. The issues are still reoccurring for women and for younger women.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the book is that, and I think that's why it has the longevity that it has. It's like over 100 years old now, and it's something that, according to Time magazine, it's like the #1 young adult novel. And that's probably why it keeps getting made into movies. That's why we keep watching it. And I understand that Hollywood and, authors in general, people in general, don't think that subject matter geared towards women, even though we are the #1 consumers of everything in the world, really sell. But this book has proven time and time again that we want to know these things. And we're not getting stories from a female perspective, especially a family of all women. Right. Like for a majority of the book, it's just them.
Yeah, it's reminiscent. It's reminiscent of the movie The Women, where it's only women being present. And really the main one who's probably the highest up is Lori. And for a little bit, I thought, is he the only man in this town? Because he won't go away. Whenever a male presence is there, 9 times out of 10, it's Lori. And at first I thought he was kind of cool when he shows up because he's a little, quiet. It's got the Byronic hero type of thing, but then he just doesn't go away.
He becomes kind of like a stalker. He literally says, I've been watching you guys in your window.
And I was kind of laughing because I wondered if you were going to make us rewatch the 1994 one for the sole purpose of watching Christian Bale as Lori. I was suspicious that you were going to do that and surprised that you didn't.
I mean, we still can. Okay. I don't see why we can't.
Nothing. Yeah. I'm good.
I mean, I think on that note, it's a good way to segue into the films of Little Women because they're honestly choosing the 2019 one was kind of selfish because I hadn't had a chance to see it before, we all went into quarantine because of COVID. Right. So this was a chance for me to see it. But I honestly didn't realize that there were more versions of Little Women than even I knew about. There are 2 versions that are lost. One made in England, one made in America in like the early 1900s. And then there's the one with Katharine Hepburn. Then there's the one with June Allison as Jo, and one of my favorite actresses, Margaret O'Brien, as Amy. Or no, Beth. She's Beth. Spoiler alert, Beth dies. But then there wasn't another one until 1994 with Christian Bale as Laurie, who, can I just say, after like reading the book, Perfect Laurie was Christian Bale.
Yeah.
I believe everything about that. But we're not going to talk about those ones. We're going to talk about the new one from Columbia Pictures, and directed by Greta Gerwig, who should have been nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. Very surprised, especially after watching the movie, that she wasn't.
Yeah, there were some really beautiful shots in this film that are quite striking.
Yeah. And the way she chose to display the materials, I honestly, if the book was done in the same format, I think I probably would have loved the book a lot more.
I did not know that it was done in that format. So at first it gave me like The Witcher PTSD because hold up. What when is this?
Yeah.
This isn't the same order. And then I realized what was happening. And by the way, here's a little nitpicking of mine. So the ages that they start out as are 16, 15, 13, and 12.
Are you going to talk about the thing that I hope you're going to talk about?
These actresses are twice the age of the girls when they start out. So they are 30, 26, 24, and 21. And part of that, I think, is one of the biggest problems with the movie. They're not little women. They're women.
They're young ladies.
Then when you're doing the moving around in the time frame, you're doing The Witcher, it makes it kind of difficult to follow. If you're someone who hasn't read the book, I would imagine you'd be pretty confused.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And that's something where in almost every other version of Little Women, they have, and just to clarify for anyone who hasn't seen the 2019 one, the book and the movie have the same plot. It's about the girls. The only difference is that it starts almost near the end and works its way through vignettes of the girls' lives as they all return home because of a tragedy in the house. That's basically a good way to describe it, I think.
What's the tragedy?
Beth is dying.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. It shouldn't make me laugh.
I don't know why you laughed either.
I think it's the way I said it. I apologize. Beth does die in both the book and the movie.
She's dead, though.
But back to the ages of the girls, I think with all the other versions of Little Women, they have it. A lot of the actresses all stay the same character, but Amy will change out from being young to being an adult towards the end. Most notably for most people, the 1994 film where Kirsten Dunst plays Amy as a young girl, and they have a different actress play her as an adult because, once again, Amy does marry Laurie at the end. But in the 2019 one, they don't do that. And it is most noticeable in the scene where they show her in school.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe this to anyone who hasn't actually seen it, but Florence Pugh is an adult.
Yeah.
She is. Picture this. You're seeing the girl from Midsommar.
Let me set the scene.
Yeah. She's sitting in a classroom that everyone around her is definitely of childhood age. Everyone around her is definitely like 12 and under. And she is definitely looking 21 and over in this scene.
She is pulling a hello, fellow students.
Yes. You know how I described it? It looked like Will Ferrell and Elf when he's sitting in the classroom chair.
And also, my favorite part, the book burning. When that happens,
Yeah.
Florence Pugh is a grown woman. And to see a very adult grown woman doing that, it's a little silly.
It is. It definitely came off as like, why? Like shrug emoji over and over and over again for some of that.
Right.
It's like,
and let me just say that this is a collection of great actresses. They're all wonderful actors, and I will watch them in anything. So their acting's great. They're wonderful, and their connection to the characters is clear. It's evident. So, however, the one person who I was shocked when he walked on screen was Bob Odenkirk.
Oh yeah, as the dad.
I was shocked. I love Bob Odenkirk. Going back to Mr. Show, I love him. I think that he is wonderful, but I was not expecting him to be the dad.
No, that was a shock to me too, because in all of the advertising for it, like we all knew Meryl Streep was in it.
Right.
We all knew Saoirse Ronan was in it.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew Hermione Granger was in it. But
right.
Thank you. But that was a shock. That was a complete shock. And so was
Chris Cooper.
Yeah, Chris Cooper as Laurie's grandfather, who I can say from personal experience, I have met him, and he is probably one of the nicest guys to ever play an evil villain that you will ever meet.
You've met so many people.
I have. I'm a name dropper. Sorry. No, but seriously, he's really nice, and he's just like a regular guy, like a regular normal guy. So I can definitely see him. When he came on the screen, I was like, this is probably perfect casting, because Laurie's grandfather is he is probably the sweetest character in the whole book. Like, I have no issues with him. The stuff that he does for Laurie was just like, ugh. That's a very modern take on things, because I think at that time period, I don't think a lot of people would have taken in their grandson who was from a marriage that was not approved of by a family, like. So, but what were your thoughts? Okay, big question: Christian Bale or Timothée Chalamet? Is that how you say his last name?
I find a lot of parallels between the two of them, to be honest. Even like they have these sharp facial features.
Yeah.
And I think that Timothée Chalamet is an up-and-coming actor that I'm very excited about. I think that he's pretty solid. So he was fine. I don't remember Christian Bale too much, but I know who Christian Bale is. I'm sure how he was in Little Women.
He was great.
Yeah. Your little Christian Bale. Let me just tell the story about when we were younger and you had the American Psycho Christian Bale blanket that you adored, and you would always have it over your lap when you were watching stuff. And then didn't your dog eat it?
Yes.
Yes.
Bit holes in it, and I still kept it.
Yeah, you were devastated about it. So for Christmas that year, I bought you I think it was a Dark Knight Batman blanket with him on it, but I knew it wasn't the same. It was a consolation prize. So R.I.P. American Psycho blanket.
I love that blanket. Honestly, I bought that as a discount when I worked at Hot Topic. But no, I think Timothy did a really good job. Although I do think that they took a lot of liberties with Laurie in the movie versus in the book. There's that scene where he shows up at that ball and he's like drunk, and he has, I imagine they're supposed to be sex workers with him in France, which, to harken back to the book real quick, how long was Amy's vacation overseas?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
In the movie, it's very short. In the book, it's like 2 years. She's gone.
It's a long time.
But he shows up at that party, and I'm like, I don't remember that from the book. And I went back to the book to look, and I was like, no, he was actually kind of civil in the book. He was kind of just like, he's what Amy said. In the book, Amy tells him, like, you're bland and boring, and you're not doing anything with your life. Why don't you do something? And I read that and I was like, she's right. He really isn't doing anything at all. And then he leaves and goes to like try and write an opera or something in the book. But in the movie, he just shows up drunk at a party and I'm like, this feels so out of character, but still definitely in character for Laurie. Like, it definitely felt like something he would do, but basing it off of the book, definitely not something he would have done.
Well, I think that there's a lot of this trend going around where you could see it with the HBO Watchmen TV show. You see it with The Haunting TV show on Netflix, where there's these adaptations that are not word for word. They are not shot for shot adaptations, but it's almost like they do a better job at getting to the heart of the original material. And I would put Little Women on that list too, where it, like we were talking about with the The Witcher, going back and forth and how she's bookending the movie, I think is very successful. And I think it gets to the heart of the book better than the prior film adaptations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely, like, overall, I would definitely recommend the 2019 movie over the book. Just because of the, well, that's a little, I would recommend the book for anyone who's looking for a gift for somebody, especially a boy. I think boys should definitely read this.
Agree.
I think it offers a really good insight into the minds of women, because it's not, yes, they have arguments about like, oh, we're never going to get anything for Christmas because Dad's away, and oh, I can't find my glove. These trivial things, yes, but they also have these expansive conversations about what it means to be a girl turning into a woman. And I think that's important for everyone to try and read that. And I wish they would teach this in schools. Like I said, I definitely would have benefited from hearing these stories when I was younger versus reading it in my 30s.
Right. And there's even the bit that I like where Jo clearly likes some of her sisters more than her other sisters.
Yet, you mean she likes Beth?
Yeah. Yet as she gets older and as she has different moments with them, she finds good in them that she didn't see before. And there is growth for each of them. And there's also growth in their personal relationships with one another that is really beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's why so many people end up resonating with Jo, because by the time you get to the end, she has taken on the best qualities of everybody around her. Really. Right. And she really uses that to give back. Both in the movie and in the book, she ends up opening up a school. Although I do like the way Greta Gerwig changed it for the movie versus the book. In the book, it is an all-boys school because Jo is wild and rambunctious and wants to be surrounded by all these boys. But in the movie, it's an all-inclusive school. It's for anybody because their town doesn't have a good enough school. And I think that was a really powerful change to make, to showcase that women deserve the same rights to education as men.
Right.
Because, as we all know, the March girls didn't go to school. Beth even left school.
Yeah.
We've talked about just about everything, and we still haven't touched upon Beth as a person.
Well, she's probably, out of all of them, she's kind of like the most sort of dour one and kind of chill.
And there is definitely an underlying factor with Beth that is never touched upon, but we're all supposed to take as a given. You know what I mean? Like
what do you mean?
Like there's something a little off about Beth.
Yeah.
Like they mention a lot in the book, especially at the beginning, even though she's older than Amy, she's constantly playing with her dolls.
Right.
And naming all the kittens and playing house a lot, and she doesn't leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very shy. But it's never touched upon.
Yeah.
In the book, the movie, it's just a given that, oh, she's just shy. And then she never goes to school.
Right. So you talked about how Gerwig should have been nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Who would you kick off the list?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who was nominated?
Yeah, I've got it pulled up. So Martin Scorsese, The Irishman.
Yeah.
Todd Phillips, Joker. Sam Mendes, 1917. Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And
that's Zuzu, you guys. She has a lot of strong feelings about Little Women.
No, she was more commenting on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
She loved it. Bong Joon-ho. Joon-ho.
Yes,
Parasite.
for Parasite.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino. No. I would definitely replace Quentin Tarantino with Greta Gerwig. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's just not.
We've got some thoughts on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Zuzu was like, "Are you kidding me? That was great." No, I definitely think she deserved the recognition, even if she wasn't. Parasite was going to win everything. We all know that.
I was so hoping it would, and I didn't think it would. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised when it did.
I mean, let's be honest, that Oscars was a little.
Yeah.
they missed a lot of really good stuff. Like,
yeah.
To go off topic from Little Women for just a minute, everybody, they should have nominated the little boy from Jojo Rabbit for Best Actor.
Oh, he was so good.
And the one who played his friend for Best Supporting Actor. Sorry, just gonna throw that out there.
The Muppet Babies, Nick Frost, and yeah, Sean. What's his name? Not Sean.
Were you gonna say Sean Penn?
Yeah. No, what's his name? Nick Frost, and what's his name?
All I can think of is Sean Penn.
I know. I'm looking it up. Hot Fuzz.
We're keeping all of this in.
Simon Pegg.
That's it. Simon, not Sean. Sorry. If they ever listen to this one, our apologies.
Sorry. Oh, one thing, I don't know if you saw it, to go back a little bit to the book, but she obviously sourced the majority of this material from her real life and her real sisters. It's interesting, though, to see some of the changes. So one of them is her dad. Her dad in this becomes this war hero, yet it seems like in her real life he was definitely not heroic and, in fact, was maybe not such a good guy. So it's interesting and also a little, sad that there is a bit of wish fulfillment in the book with some of the changes that she made from her real life to this fiction.
Yeah. And I kind of like that as it relates to the film too, because it's like she had her wish fulfillment and wrote these characters as she wanted them to be, and then Greta Gerwig took the characters and turned them into a more modern version of what we wanted them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I like how that was able to continue. When COVID is over, we should definitely go to Concord, where we can actually go to the house. It's a museum right now, but you can tour Louisa May Alcott's actual house, which she based the entire house that the Marches lived in. So we can reenact our favorite scenes, like like throwing the ugly, hard as hell pillow at Lori. We could do that one.
I can fall into a pond.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna set a book on fire.
I'm gonna cut all my hair off again.
Yeah, I sold it. Oh, and Meryl Streep's gonna roll up and tell us how terrible we are.
I love Meryl Streep.
I do too.
I love her so much. I am happy whenever she's in anything.
Yeah. You know what else? That was something I found super interesting when talking about the comparisons between the movie and the book.
Mm-hmm.
The way they set up, and this is every version of this, every movie, the way they set it up is like, Meg gets married, Laurie immediately asks to marry Joe, and then everything just falls into place after that. In the book, like, Meg gets married, and then, you know, Laurie's at school for a while, and Joe has her own little adventures and stuff. Like, Joe meets the man she's going to marry before Laurie even proposes to her. Which, if you only base it off of if you only ever base it off of the movies, even this 2019 version, she doesn't meet Professor Bear until after Laurie proposes. And what is Hollywood's deal with erasing children from adaptations?
Yeah.
I'm sure when we finally talk about Gone with the Wind, I'm going to have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, that's a biggie. That's a biggie with Gone with the Wind.
There's a whole thing about that in Gone with the Wind. But in Little Women,
Scarlett needs like a giant minivan to cart those kids around. She's got a bunch of them.
Yes. So I imagine they couldn't put that into a movie because they didn't have minivans in the 1930s when they made the movie version of Gone with the Wind. But in Little Women, the professor is taking care of his nephews. And until I read the book, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, why? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be that they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. I imagine it's a lot to deal with, like, too many characters. And that was my other problem with the book, is then towards, like, in movies they know to take away too many characters. In the book, we have a whole chapter about the twins.
Right. And
it comes at the end of the book. For no reason. But,
gotta fill in those pages.
Just getting paid by the word. But I guess overall, would you recommend the book to anyone, and would you recommend the movie to anybody?
I would recommend the book, but it's a lot fewer people that I would recommend the book to than the movie. I think that the movie is easier to swallow. But I would say that for the book, I agree with what you were saying earlier, which is about it being taught in schools. Yeah. I think that this is a really good book to give to younger people. It actually, did you read the Little House on the Prairie series?
No.
Oh, you didn't? What?
No.
That's very surprising. So when I was a kid, I had all of the Little House on the Prairie books, and I also was very obsessed with the stories from the American Girl doll collection.
Don't even get me started on those. Yes.
Reading Little Women definitely brought me back to that area of my life, because there is something really fun when you're a kid and reading through books that has world building from a prior time, and it's female centric characters. It's just very fun to kind of open your mind and think about how other girls your age or around your age lived in other timelines. It's so interesting and fascinating, and reading this gave me Little House on the Prairie vibes big time. I think that it's a better book for a younger age. I probably wouldn't be as, I guess, negative as I am on certain aspects of the book had I read it. Well, I did read it. I read the abridged version, and I don't remember it, so I can't even say that.
Oh, see, I didn't even read an abridged version of it.
Yeah.
And if I had known there was an abridged version, I probably would have read that instead of reading the whole book. I'm sorry, Louisa May Alcott, but you could have trimmed some of this down.
Trimmed some of the fat.
And to anyone who says it's on their list of 100 best books, I also apologize to you, too.
So would you recommend it? Would you recommend the book and the movie?
I would 100% recommend the movie, and I already have. Yeah. I recommended it to my mom because it was actually shot. The film is actually shot all in Massachusetts.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's definitely they actually took from the locations of the actual book, and there is actually a part they shot at the Crane Estate, which is popular for being in I almost called it Practical Magic. That's not what it is. The one with Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, Witches of Eastwick.
That's it. That's his house. Yeah. You know his house in Witches of Eastwick? That's where they shot scenes from Little Women. So the scenes where Amy is supposed to be.
I just pulled it up. Yeah. It's so cool.
That was a place that Jesse and I were looking at as a venue for a wedding reception. Everybody, take a look at the Crane Estate. It is gorgeous. You can go there. Christina, come to Massachusetts. Hang out with me. I will drive you around. The Crane Estate is gorgeous. Like, it's these sprawling hills that go straight down to the ocean. It is gorgeous. And the scenes where you can really see the Crane Estate are when Laurie and Amy are sitting in the grass and she's drawing with him. That's actually part of their Italian garden section. And then the scene where they it's a wide shot where they pull up in a carriage. Mm-hmm. And you can see a big estate house in the distance and all that stuff. That's actually the back of the house.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll show you some pictures. But it's...
See, I would get in trouble if I went to this place because then they'd be like, ma'am, you can't blow up a 5,000 pink balloons. And what are you doing? And then I just go, well, you saw the Witches of Eastwick, right? So there's this part...
You know what? You probably will not be the first or the last. It's in a lot, actually. The Crane Estate's in a lot of different film and TV shows. And I did recommend, like I said, I recommended Little Women to my mom immediately after I saw the scene where they pulled up to it. And I paused it and I went, oh my God, it's a Crane Estate. And then I looked it up on IMDb. And I was right. And I was like, Mom, you gotta watch it. My mom does background work occasionally, or she used to. And that was one of the films that she just didn't have the time to do. And I was, my mom could have met Meryl Streep. I know.
Kidnapped her.
Right? Bring her home. My grandma will feed her. Come back to Gloucester. Eat some pasta. But yeah, like I said, the movie, definitely recommend it to everybody. It's fun, and it's to date the highest grossing of all the Little Women films.
Wow.
Yeah, so every time they do it, it just keeps getting better. And like I said about the book, I would definitely recommend it 5th grade or 6th through 8th grade classes, because I think that's the time when a lot of this material is going to be the most important to both boys and girls. I think it's something that everyone should definitely read it. Read it at least once. And you know what? Forget that. Everyone should read this book so you can understand what I mean when I say Laurie was so devastated by this refusal that he ran down a hill and got in a boat and rowed away in a boat. I wish they would have put that in the movie. Just to see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
But, I mean, the book, definitely read it, because, listen, we're still talking about it. Mm-hmm. They got us to talk about it.
I will say this. Little Women ran so that Now and Then could fly.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, Now and Then. If that was based off of a book, we'd be talking about that. But
I wonder, that feels like it was a book. I feel like that could have been.
Thank you, Zuzu. Hold for some barking. She loves Now and Then. There we go. I guess that's all we have to say about Little Women. As two little women, I think that's all we have to say about ourselves.
Yeah, I think we can wrap this one up.
Oh wait, one more question for you.
Yes.
Are you a Meg, a Beth, an Amy, or a Jo?
I'm a Marmee.
I think that's the best place to leave it.
All right.
Do you want to tell everybody what we're going to read next?
Yes. So next episode is something very near and dear to our hearts. We are going to be discussing Party Monster, which was originally published as Disco Bloodbath. So it is Disco Bloodbath meets oh my gosh, tongue twister. Disco Bloodbath meets Party Monster.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so pumped.
I know, I am too.
Thank you, Christina, for actually reading Little Women with me.
Thank you. No, it was fun.
All right. Well, until next time.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Go use your library card. Wear a mask and use your library card. All right. Bye.